Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You guys sent in some really fascinating articles about trends in the coin market, and I am really excited to dig into them with you.
Me too. I think this is going to be a really fun one.
I think so too. So change on the horizon for coin markets and Jeff Garrett. Changing trends in numismatics both touch on some really important developments, and our mission today to figure out what they mean for you, the listener.
Exactly. And one thing that really caught my eye was this whole thing about gold prices and gold coins. I mean, it almost seems counterintuitive, right? You've got gold prices going through the roof, but
And demand for gold coins is dropping.
yeah, exactly. Change on the horizon points that out right away.
It's like the opposite of what you'd expect. So what's going on there?
Well, it's a couple of things, I think. On one hand, you've got investors who are seeing these high gold prices and thinking, okay, time to cash in. They're selling, and that drives down demand.
Makes sense.
And on the other hand, you've got people who might be interested in buying gold coins, but they're getting priced out. Gold's so expensive that it creates a barrier to entry, especially for new collectors.
So it's a double-edged sword. High prices are great for sellers, but tough for buyers. And change on the horizon even mentioned this trend isn't just an American thing, it's happening globally. Did you see that part about Argor Heraeus?
Oh, yeah, the one about the import duties in India.
Yeah. Even when India cut those import duties, which you'd think would boost demand, it was only a blip on the radar.
Right, like a short-term spike and then poof, back to the downward trend.
Makes you wonder what the long-term implications are. What happens if gold keeps climbing? Do gold coins stop being collectibles and become purely investment vehicles? Something to think about.
Definitely. And speaking of things that make you think, did you catch the part about banknotes?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
really surprised by that. I mean, with everything going digital, you wouldn't think physical money would be having a moment.
But it is. Especially in India, banknotes are booming as collectibles.
It's like their historical and artistic value is finally getting the recognition it deserves.
Yeah.
The article mentioned museum exhibits and auctions heating up.
Exactly. And it made me think maybe this is a preview of what's to come for U.S. coins, too. I mean, Change on the Horizon mentioned that whole collaboration between the U.S. Mint and Warner Brothers, right?
The pop culture coins, right.
It feels like a smart move to me. Tap into those themes that resonate with younger generations, superheroes, movies, music, and suddenly collecting feels a lot more relatable.
It's like they're bridging the gap between traditional collecting and modern interests. A way to bring new blood into the hobby. Now, let's talk about a force that's definitely shaking things up. The mega collectors.
The whales, as they're sometimes called.
Exactly. Jeff Garrett. Changing trends in numismatics really highlighted their impact. I mean, when you've got individuals dropping millions on a single coin.
Like that NGC-certified ancient coin that went for $1.9 million.
Yeah, that one. It's a whole different ballgame. And the article mentioned there are at least 4 to 6 billionaires who are actively collecting each, investing at least $200 million.
They're definitely a driving force in the high-end market, not really affected by the economic ups and downs that might make other collectors hesitate.
But does that mean the average collector is getting squeezed out? Is it even possible to compete at that level?
I don't think so, no. But it does highlight how important it is to understand the evolution of collecting tastes. Jeff Garrett. Changing Trends in Numismatics did a good job of tracing that. Remember how the article talked about the early focus on large cents?
And then the shift to branch mint coins.
Exactly. That tiny mint mark on the 1927D Double Eagle can mean the difference between a $2,000 coin and a $2 million coin. It's all about understanding what drives value.
So it's not always about the intrinsic value of the metal itself.
Not always. Rarity, historical significance, condition, these things play a huge role. And let's not forget the impact of third-party grading and the internet. Those two factors completely reshape the hobby.
I mean, can you imagine trying to collect coins before those things came along? It seems almost impossible.
Right. Third-party grading brought so much transparency to the market. Suddenly, everyone was speaking the same language when it came to a coin's condition.
And the internet. Well, that just blew everything wide open.
Exactly. It created a global marketplace, connected buyers and sellers, and made information so much more accessible. But it's also had its downsides, right? Booms and busts, speculation.
Yeah, for sure. But it seems like things have settled down a bit, wouldn't you say?
I think so. And what's interesting is that today's market is driven so much by collector demand, especially for complete high-grade sets. Change on the Horizon talked about that set registry mentality, remember?
Oh, right. So now even those once common coins can be incredibly valuable if they're the missing piece in someone's perfect set.
Exactly. It's all about context and how that individual coin fits into the bigger picture. It's fascinating, isn't it? How the dynamics of the market have shifted.
It really is. And speaking of shifts, Jeff Garrett pointed out the growing popularity of modern coins, particularly silver eagles.
Right. He called them a gateway for new collectors.
Which makes sense. They're attractive, they're affordable, and they have that bullion value. It's a low-risk way to get started.
And it ties back into what we were talking about earlier with those pop culture coins. It's all about making the hobby more accessible.
Right, like, hey, come on in, there's something here for everyone. But the question is, with so much to choose from, how do you find your niche?
That is the question, isn't it? And that's what we'll dive into next.
Okay, so we've talked about these trends, but like, what does it all actually mean for someone who's looking to buy or sell coins? What's the takeaway here?
I think the biggest thing is just how important it is to really know what you're doing in this market. Like whether you've been collecting for years or you're just getting started, you really got to understand the nuances to make good decisions.
So it's more than just liking the way a coin looks.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's part of it, of course. But you got to look at the historical context, the rarity, the condition, and you have to understand the overall market demand.
It's a lot to keep track of.
It can feel overwhelming, yeah. But I always tell people, start with what you like.
So don't just chase the trends or try to buy what everyone else is buying.
Right. Find what speaks to you personally, whether it's a certain design, a historical period you're interested in, anything.
To find your niche.
Exactly. Passion is key in any hobby. And coin collecting is no different. When you're passionate about something, the learning process becomes fun.
I like that. So, okay, you find your niche, you're learning, you're passionate, but how do you balance that with the reality of the market? Like, can you collect for the love of it and make smart investments?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's where research comes in. Spend some time really getting to know the different series, look at price trends, talk to reputable dealers.
Don't be afraid to ask questions, right?
Yeah.
Never. There are so many people in the coin collecting community who are happy to share what they know. It's one of the great things about this hobby.
So it's really like any other investment. You got to do your homework.
Yeah, exactly. The more you know, the better decisions you can make. And, there are tools that can really help with that, like third-party grading and online resources.
Right. Grading gives you that standardized way to assess a coin's condition, which is huge for figuring out its value.
And online platforms, you can find so much information there. Past sales, price trends, even expert analysis.
It's like having a whole library at your fingertips.
It is. But even with all that information, it's still important to understand the specifics.
Yeah.
The nuances of the different coins and categories.
Okay, so let's talk specifics.
Uh-huh.
Are there any coins or categories that you have your eye on right now? Any you think are poised for growth?
Well, I can't give away all my secrets, but I can offer some general thoughts, I guess. Like, I think there's still a lot of potential in modern coins, especially the ones with limited mintages or unique designs.
So keep an eye out for those special releases and commemorative coins.
Exactly. They often have a built-in collector base, which is a good sign.
What about older coins? Any hidden gems out there you think are undervalued?
Well, there's always potential for that. I'd say keep an eye on coins from earlier eras, particularly those in high grades. Sometimes a well-preserved coin from a less popular series can be a better investment than a more common coin in rough shape.
So it's that balance again. Rarity, condition, demand.
It's like a three-legged stool. You need all three for it to stand strong.
I like that three-legged stool. I'm going to remember that.
And don't forget about the power of storytelling. Like we talked about, finding a coin that connects to a particular historical event or turning point that can really add a whole other layer to your collection.
It's like owning a piece of history.
Exactly. And as we talked about before, that historical significance can also drive up value.
So we're not just talking about numismatics anymore. We're talking about cultural significance.
I think that's really where the future of coin collecting is going, appreciating the artistry, the history, the stories behind these objects.
Okay, so for our listener who's ready to put all this into practice, what's the most important piece of advice you can give?
Do your research. Don't buy on impulse. Take the time to really learn about different series, look at price trends, and build those relationships with reputable dealers. And most importantly, ask questions. Don't be afraid to learn.
It's a journey of discovery, right?
Exactly. And it's a fun one, so enjoy it.
Okay, so we've talked about the trends, we've talked about the challenges and the rewards, but let's get down to brass tacks. If our listeners out there and they are ready to jump into the market, what should they actually do?
That's a great question. I think the first thing is to really define your goals as a collector. Like, what are you hoping to get out of this?
So is it about the money? Is it about history? Is it just about finding cool coins you like the look of?
Well, it could be any of those or all of the above. But you got to figure out what's most important to you. It's kind of like having a roadmap before you set off on a journey, you know? Knowing where you want to go makes it a lot easier to figure out how to get there.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So once you have your roadmap, where do you go from there?
Then you can start researching, right? Like, if you're interested in a certain period of history, you can look into the coins that were minted during that time. Or if you're drawn to a particular design or artist, you can start exploring their work.
And this is where all those online resources and dealer networks come in handy.
Oh, absolutely. Auction sites, dealer websites, they're all gold mines of information. You can find images, historical background, price trends, you name it.
And don't be shy about reaching out to those dealers directly, right?
Never. Reputable dealers are such a valuable resource. They have so much knowledge, and they're usually happy to answer your questions.
So it's as much about building a network as it is about building a collection.
You got it. And don't forget about coin shows and clubs. There's a whole community of passionate collectors out there who love to share what they know.
It's a team sport.
Exactly. And remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Building a collection takes time. So be patient, do your research, and don't be afraid to ask for help along the way.
Oh, and one more thing. Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Oh yeah, for sure. We've all been there.
It's all part of the learning process.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is to have fun. Coin collecting should be enjoyable. So relax, take your time, and enjoy the journey.
Well said. You know, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about trends, we've talked about the challenges and rewards, and we've talked about how to actually get started as a collector.
Yeah, we have. And I think the thing that really stands out to me is the idea that it's all about the passion.
Yeah, that's what makes it so special. It's not just about the coins themselves. It's about the history, the stories, the connections they represent.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up another deep dive. Thanks so much for joining us today. Be sure to check back for our next episode. Until then, happy collecting, everyone.